Welcome on in, everyone, to another edition of Navigating Trump 2.0. This is the show that takes a look at the week that was in the nation's capital through the lens of the second Trump administration. And joining me once again this week, David Brody, CBN News chief political analyst, and Dan Andros, host of CBN's Quick Start podcast. And guys, it happened again this week. At the start of the week, I had a whole list of things that I thought we were going to talk about, ready to go. I'm getting my prep together, and here by the end of the week on Friday, as we're recording, it gets completely upended because, as we know, in the Trump nation's capital, Washington, D.C., things are always changing. And I want to start off talking about this Ukraine-Russia deal that came down the pike here on Thursday, really hit the headlines on Thursday as the White House announced a 28-point peace plan that was reportedly negotiated mostly with Russia in a one-on-one situation that would aim to end the nearly four-year-long Ukraine war. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky did meet with the Secretary of the U.S. Army in Kyiv yesterday as they went over some of the finer points of this draft. In remarks on Thursday night, he remained noncommittal, didn't trash it, but also didn't say, yes, where all systems go. Critics, among them European Union allies and Republican Congressman Don Bacon, I saw, called it a giveaway to Russia. The White House forcefully pushing back on that, maintaining they've negotiated equally with Russia and Ukraine, and that this is a fair deal for both sides that both should accept. Before I get your thoughts on it, let me just run down the bullet points of what's in it. Russia promises to make no future attacks against Ukraine. There are other security guarantees that Ukraine has wanted, but it would not require the U.S. or European allies to engage itself militarily if Russia does not keep their promise not to attack. It would earmark $100 billion of frozen Russian assets to go towards Ukrainian reconstruction. The deal would bar Ukraine from ever entering NATO, and it would prevent NATO from expanding further. It would also cede territory to Russian President Vladimir Putin, specifically all of the Donbass region and Crimea, including regions he has unsuccessfully tried to get militarily during this war. And the U.S. would also lift sanctions on Russia on a case-by-case basis and in stages. And there are some other points to the plan as well. So, David, as I've unpacked it all, and clearly there are other aspects to this and little tentacles of this deal that we will learn about here over the next few weeks and months. What do you make of this?
Well, you called, you didn't call this a fair deal, but you said someone out there called it some sort of fair deal. Look, this is a Russia sweetheart deal is what this is. I mean, let's just be clear about it. And if I was Howie Mandel from Deal or No Deal, and like Ukraine was like right there at the buzzer, no deal. I mean, come on. I mean, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? But I'm going to get into why Zelensky may actually go for it here in just a moment. But obviously, you just laid out so many reasons why not to do the deal. Also, there's so much more in here, just about Ukraine reducing their military size. And just there's a lot of different things going on here. But let me say what's going on specifically. We're getting new reports now that the Trump administration is trying to pressure Zelensky into this deal by Thanksgiving. They want it done quickly. And the reason they're pressuring him is because he's got this corruption scandal going on in Ukraine with his government. They've got energy prices that are a real problem now in Ukraine. So he is weakened right now. Also, Russia is on the move as well in certain areas. So you put it all together, and Zelensky is in a very weak position right now. And I think this is why the Trump administration feels like a deal could be done at this point, just because Zelensky might just be forced to take it. Having said that, guys, I mean, we haven't even talked about the Ukrainian parliament and about what they would need to sign on to exactly, because you have to have a vote apparently 100 days after this deal, and that's going to complicate matters. So, do I see this happening? No. Do I see a potential sliver of possibility? Yes, just based on the fact that Zelensky's in a tough spot. But this is just a sweetheart deal for Russia, guys.
Right. And Dan, speaking to Zelensky's tough spot, one of the things he did say was that if he turns it down, he risks losing U.S. support. If he accepts it, he risks getting humiliated because he essentially has given away everything that they have fought so hard not to give away. So, Dan, I want to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's like David said. I mean, it does not look like a very good spot, an enviable spot to be in if you're Zelensky with this corruption scandal going on and everything else. I mean, about the only thing I could possibly see in this deal that was even remotely favorable to Ukraine was that security guarantee. But like you're saying, John, it's not even really clear on what that exactly means. It says if Russia were to reinvade Ukraine, it would call for a decisive, coordinated military response and some sanctions on Russia. Well, what does that mean exactly? Because if it's not very firm, why would Russia and Putin stop at this if they want more? If this is the reaction they get and this is what they get afterwards, and they call a potential bluff, as we know a lot of the MAGA wing of the MAGA party they're not big fans of wars and getting in between Russia and Ukraine. And so could Trump risk losing even more support over this sort of thing? So yeah, that's about the only nugget in there I saw that could be good, but it's vague, and so we don't really even know what it means, and it could just leave Putin thinking, "Great, I mean, so what? I'll test him on that when the time comes."
And one other thing, I'm sorry, John, can I just say something? Here's another part of the deal that Russia's going to give $100 billion to Ukraine for reconstruction efforts. Hold on for a second. Let's unpack that for a second. Within the deal, specifically, the United States would get the proceeds, some profits, 50% of the profits from that reconstruction deal. And then what it also calls for is for the United States to reinvest that money in projects with Russia. I mean, what? God, I'm sorry. I need to take a sedative. Yeah. And I'm out of sedatives with this navigating Trump 2.0 at this point. So go figure. I'm done.
Yeah, no, and it is the White House that Caroline Leavitt at her press briefing on Thursday, and she was really pushing the point that they have also spoken to, they say they've spoken to Ukraine equally with Russia during this process, but I mean, the reporting is that this particular deal was really hashed out between the U.S. and Russia, and now taking it to Ukraine, and Congressman Bacon made comments about this on Thursday, basically saying that this is kind of what it looked like in Munich, when they were trying to negotiate with Hitler, as Hitler was starting to make his moves across Europe. They thought, okay, we can just kind of keep him here in these spots, and he's not going to want to go after France. He's not going to want to go after some of the other larger countries in Europe. He's going to be content with just taking Austria and taking a couple other smaller countries. And clearly that wasn't the case. And so, Dan, to your point, the whole point of NATO is that if Russia were to invade Ukraine again, were to act militarily in Ukraine again, that there would be an automatic military response, right? The treaty would say that that has to happen. So what kind of security guarantee doesn't guarantee that there would be involvement, whether it's with the US or Europe or whoever else, if Russia decides to go back on their word and decides, okay, yeah, we want a little bit more now?
Yeah, and why would we assume anything different? I mean, Putin, he already burned Trump once on the national stage and then just kind of, flaunted more attacks and things after they talked the first time around because he thought Trump was trying to look tough on the national stage. And so he went back and did that. I just don't see how Putin, given what we know about him, is going to stop. So
can I just say one last thing?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. And this is a Dr. Phil situation, getting inside Trump's head, which, is a whole full-time job, 24/7. But let me just say that the way Trump, and I've known him, like I said, for about 15 years, my sense of Trump is that he sees life as with winners and losers. And the way he sees it is Russia/Putin, they're the winners. They're the aggressors. They shouldn't have done what they did, but they won the war. Oh, well. Ukraine, you lost. And so because you lost, you're going to have to give up something. And now you're going to have to figure it out. And I just want the killing to stop. But there's kind of like, I don't want to call it a respect for Putin, but in a way there is, right? Like you went into a territory, you shouldn't have done what you did, but the fact that you did it and you actually won, tell you what, to the victor goes the spoils. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that in Trump's mind.
It's kind of a you can't cry over spilled milk kind of a situation if you're Ukraine. But yeah, I think you're right, David. I think that's exactly how he's framing this. Yeah. And so we'll see how this moves forward over the next few weeks. I don't anticipate. And the other thing too is part of this deal. How can Trump and Russia say to NATO, you can't invite anyone else in. But in order for
Yeah,
NATO to be
good
held
point.
accountable, they have to agree to this. And like, how do you? There's no chance. There's a lot of things left, a lot of an unspooled thread here that we're trying to pull together. So, all right, let's talk about some interesting comments that were made by some Democratic lawmakers this week, and a very, very interesting response by the president. In a video posted to X on Tuesday, Democratic lawmakers Senator Alyssa Slotkin, Senator Mark Kelly, Congressman Jason Crow, Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander, Congressman Chris Deluzio, and Representative Chrissy Houlihan, all of them former military or intelligence officers, put out a video that said the threats to our Constitution are coming from right here at home, and urged the military repeatedly in the video and the intelligence community to refuse any illegal orders that they get. They said no one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution. Know that we have your back. Don't give up the ship. In the video, the lawmakers, they don't specify exactly what kind of laws that they are talking about. And that's kind of one of the things I want to talk to you guys about, is what it is you think that they're talking about. But Trump responded angrily on social media, David, at one time saying these Democrats were engaged in seditious behavior, saying seditious behavior punishable by death. He also then reposted messages by other Truth Social users that called for them, the Democratic lawmakers, to be, he said, George Washington would hang them, or hang them like George Washington would. So before we get into what the members of Congress said, and none of us are lawyers, but we can kind of talk a little bit about the legality of what it is that they're saying. What did you make of President Trump's response to this?
Well, it didn't surprise me. I know it might surprise a lot of folks, but Trump and bombastic language go hand in hand. I would say a couple of things. He might want to check U.S. Code Title 18 that talks about sedition. Sedition is not punishable by death in the U.S. Code. Civilians, if they are convicted of sedition, get up to 20 years in jail, and that includes members of Congress. They are considered civilians. So this idea of punishable by death is not true, number one. What he might be referring to is the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the UCMJ, that if you're a military member and you're convicted of sedition, then indeed that could be potentially the death penalty. But that's not what these congressmen are not military members. So I just want to clear that up for our audience.
No, that's good clarification. I didn't know that, but one of the things, Dan, that we are also talking about here is unlawful orders and whether the military has a right to follow them. Before we get into that, I want to get your thoughts on what the president said, though. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why he's frustrated. I think maybe he kind of forgot or lost for a second the fact that he, a little while ago, after he was nearly killed twice,
right?
That he kind of talked about toning down the rhetoric and stuff, and I understand, like, he's tweeting back, and he does these sorts of things all the time. I just think it's not great given all the threats of violence that we've had. What happened to Charlie Kirk, actual violence. I don't love it. So I think and hopefully he would tone that down from here, but I also don't know what the Democrats are doing here. Like, what are you going out there and doing and being Vagey McVagerson there on your, hey, everybody stand firm and don't do it. Like, just stand up and don't obey these, and like not tell them what it is. What do we want? A bunch of people inside the government being their own little constitutional lawyers and trying to decide like what they're going to do and not do? Like, I feel like that's a pretty irresponsible thing they did, especially coming from the party that, was out there, crying about insurrection after January 6th for years and years and years and years. And then you sit here and you're telling everybody to rise on up and don't listen to the president. Like, it's a little ridiculous. And I thought it was, on their part as well, irresponsible to not say what you're talking about.
Thank you, Dan, for saying the truth, because, John, that is the truth. I mean, you can't in a video say you can and must disobey illegal orders. What does that mean? Like, to your question, John, you were going to ask us, what are they talking about? Beats me. I mean, what does that mean? I mean, if someone said that, if I'm in the military and someone said that to me, I'm thinking to myself, well, do you mean your interpretation of what's an illegal order, or my interpretation of what's an illegal order, or a federal judge in Mississippi's interpretation, or what are you talking about? What's the benchmark exactly? Well, the benchmark should be the the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, obviously, they should obey the U.S. Supreme Court's issue on any sort of order that was ruled either constitutional or unconstitutional. But no, what are they talking about? It's extremely irresponsible. And you can make an argument. I'm not going to make an argument for sedition here on this podcast, but you can go ahead down that road and say that could be potentially sedition. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. But I understand what the seriousness of what the president is talking about here, about what Democrats are doing, because we talked about toning down the rhetoric. Well, doesn't that just apply to that video as well? I mean, to me, you can make the argument that that rhetoric actually could be far worse than what President Trump said. Once again, I'm not saying that I'm not approving of that rhetoric by the president. I'm just saying it cuts both ways.
So my reading of this is that it seems to me these members of Congress are talking about things like the strike on the Venezuelan boats, where you're not going through due process to figure out who exactly is on these boats. You're making educated guesses, or you're using, I imagine, the intelligence community to kind of guide you in terms of what this is. But I think they're talking about that. I think they're talking about the use of military in police actions in some in U.S. cities, and so I think those are the types of things that they're talking about. But the fact that they don't get into that definitely it cuts into their whatever message it is that they're trying to accomplish, and I think it absolutely puts members of the military, the rank and file members of the military, in a horrible position, because they, as a member of the military, you can be held accountable. You can be prosecuted for violating the law, even though you've followed an order. If it's an unlawful order, you can be held accountable. But these rank and file members of the military, they're not legal scholars. They don't know what the U.S. Army Code or U.S. Military Code of Justice says specifically most of the time. It's up to their commanding officers. Like, that's where the buck stops. The commanding officers should know what a lawful order is, what a lawful act is. And I wonder if it's not them that these lawmakers are talking to and pushing it up the chain of command to say, sir, is this a lawful order? I don't feel comfortable telling the people under me this. And but they're not. I think that's the problem with the video, is that it lacks specifics. It seems as though it's more a video to hit at the president than it is to try and help the military understand what it is they should do, could do, are allowed to do, and how, if they feel like they are going to violate if they're going to commit an unlawful act, what their recourse is, how they handle it. And that's the part that is disturbing to me about the video. As to whether or not it's on the same level as what Trump said, I want the president of the United States to be more careful with his
That's
work.
fair.
Yeah, he should. That's
fair. What I hate about this, and I hate it when he does this. I just absolutely, it just makes because you get the folks out there who just listen to what the president says, and they just want to jump in. They want to dive in. Yeah, let's get them. Yeah, let's do this.
Well,
and that's a problem.
And then you also get the people on the other side who then hate him for it.
Right, sure.
And so it goes both ways, right? So like it's not helpful in any direction to go that way. And especially when, listen, you're talking politically, you have it's bad that they did this, but you have a quote unquote winning moment here of them doing something dumb.
Right.
And you being able to call them out, and then you make the problem, you make it worse on your end and throw out questionable and, just unsavory sort of rhetoric out there. And then you make your rhetoric the story when it should be more on what the Democrats did. So it's kind of, to me, like, he just sort of fumbled that a little bit. But this is just what he does, right? He always has these sort of, types
he
of
does, but I don't want to
same
same watch it. You know what I mean?
I don't either. I'm just saying, like, I'm expecting a different result, but this is what happens every time. So like,
Yeah.
Well, we might not same watch it, but and once again, not defending what he said, but let's be honest here. What he said on Truth Social is what a lot of Americans, and especially in MAGA, think.
And I actually think, real quick, David, I actually think a lot of what he said wasn't that bad, but it was that the hanging one was probably the one.
Yeah, that one.
I mean, don't do that. Why are we doing the hanging one? If you're just talking about sedition and, hey, like, this looks like sedition to me, like, we can have that conversation, right? Like,
agreed.
But don't retweet the guy saying hang them all. That's not.
I agree. No, the punishable by death and the hanging stuff. I agree. But if he says sedition, I think he is channeling a lot of folks in MAGA who think that too. And so my point is that this has been why Trump got elected in the first place, because he channels the inside voice of many Americans. And so you can't just turn off.
Right.
You just can't. He's not going to turn it off. He's going to be who he is. It's authentic to a fault, and it's authentic to the presidency. He's president of the United States twice because he was authentic, and he gets ripped because he is authentic. I mean, it is what it is. And you know what? He would never have been president if he wasn't authentic. That's just the truth. One last thing. You said it lacked details. You know, I would suggest that even if they gave us the details, and you mentioned Venezuela, you mentioned some of what's going on, I guess, with the National Guard or whatever. But here's the thing. Even if they had given us those details, we'd still have the same question, which is like, hold on, but that's going through the court system right now. So especially on the National Guard. Now, Venezuela, I know Congress has got some issues, and that eventually could be litigated all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. So even if you gave details, it's not going to help your argument, because actually it might hurt your argument more. And that's why they probably didn't give details.
Right. Because then they get to look at the case and litigate it and say, well, what do you mean?
Right. See, they couldn't do that, John. So I think they purposely didn't give any details, because that would have hurt their argument. That would have hurt their argument.
You can't pin them down. No, I get that. And I understand that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's finish up talking about this, the Jeffrey Epstein developments. In a big week in the Jeffrey Epstein story here. This week, Congress voted to release all the Epstein files. Can you believe we're here? I didn't think we'd come to see this. It followed a surprising 180 by President Trump, where he relented and told Republicans to go ahead and vote to release the files. Dan, this was clearly an issue where congressional Republicans, and really in this case, House Republicans, were defying the president. This has been a rarity, specifically in the second administration, more so than the first. But some are speculating, and I've seen a couple different articles about this online, that, you know, President Trump has entered the lame duck part of his presidency here in his second term. He can't run again in 2028. At least we don't think so. It doesn't seem like that'd be possible, but, you know, speculating. So some are speculating that he's entered the lame duck phase of his presidency, because you are seeing Republicans in the House and the Senate, essentially, it seemed to me, force his hand into saying, okay, fine. It's like when your kids are just driving you so crazy about something, and you're just like, fine, go ahead and have the soda. I don't care. You know, it almost seems that's kind of where we were with this. Do you see this as maybe the first part of his second administration entering lame duck territory, or is this just simply this story, this topic, Republicans specifically were like, yeah, no, we can't go with you on this?
I think a couple things are going on here. Number one is I do think on the right, like we've talked about sort of the rift that's going there. So I feel like there is a little more of a willingness to criticize President Trump these days on certain issues. And so we're seeing that more now than we did in the past. Like that's definitely happening there. But I think this particular issue here is one where Republicans were like, whoa, wait a minute. Like this is, I feel like, a little bit of an outlier issue where they have been clamoring for whatever is in these Epstein files and did not like it. We saw it when Bondi came out. She got ripped for the way she handled it. Even Patel as well. So I think people were kind of just like, this one sort of elevated past any, sort of allegiance to Trump and saying like, well, we're going to overlook this one here because we like what Trump's doing. Like this one definitely surpassed that. And I think people were just not willing to let it go, given how much they built it up ahead of time, how important it was that they wanted to see what's in this.
I think Dan's 100% right. This is a heart and soul issue for MAGA. And that's going to transcend anybody, Trump. And this should give everybody, this should be exhibit A as to if you ever say that they're just following Trump, they, MAGA, just to follow Trump. This is exhibit A to say absolutely not. And I've always never really believed that. And this is one of the issues. There's others. I mean, look what's going on with Marjorie Taylor Greene. We can talk about that in a second. I mean, there's tons of others where they're standing up to Trump. But this is a heart and soul issue. And so, sorry, but this was the biggest reversals. This is like I close my eyes as a Jet fan and I'm in last place, and I open up my eyes and we're in first place. That it's like that. Like Trump asked for the Epstein files to be released back in 2019 and all that, or, for years he's been doing this. And then, of course, now it's a Democrat hoax. I mean, this started at the top. Shame on this administration. They made it a bigger story than it even needed to be. And don't get me wrong, it's a big story, but they stepped on themselves multiple times here. And honestly, shame on them. Shame on them. Where was the moral clarity on this story? They had moral clarity 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And then in the moment of truth, they decided that it's a Democrat hoax. Now, to be clear, absolutely the Democrats were playing politics. And their hands are dirty here too. But to me, the story specifically is Trump should have done the right thing. He didn't. And he finally was dragged kicking and screaming all the way because Republicans said, no, this is heart and soul for us. And that's the truth, guys. Yeah. That's the truth. And I know, real quick, I know some of our audience might not like that. Sorry, Dan. I'm sorry. No, I know okay. Some of our audience might not like that, but that is straight up truth.
Second, what I was going to ask was, okay, now we get past this, it gets released. Like, are we going to actually see anything this time? Last time they were like, we got them, guys. And it was just like this big redacted page with the word like the out there. And you're like, oh, great. Thanks. Well, that was awesome.
This is different because this is a law. I mean, this is a law that's been passed that requires the Justice Department to release everything. And there have been promises by Thomas Massie, by Nancy Mace, and by Marjorie Taylor Greene that if the White House does drag their feet on this, if they say, well, this is national security, we're not, that they'll go out and just read the names. Like yes. They'll read the names on the House floor.
And then, and the second part of that though is your name being in the Epstein files doesn't mean you did anything, right? Like this is, so that to me, that's the other distinction that people have to be careful of, because every time I've seen something in somebody's name, including Trump's name, they're like, it actually, his name in there, everything I've seen so far, it's like, now they said he didn't do anything wrong. And all the victims were like, no, he was fine. He didn't know anything. He was out there. It's like, just supports some of these people like that they're innocent. And it's just their names, just, they went to a party or something, right? And then, took a picture and all of a sudden they're in there. So we got to be careful about what these files actually mean once they're released, if they're released and we see them. So, well,
I just want to also say, remember, the law says that if any of this is under active investigation, they can redact some of this stuff. They don't have to do it. Also, remember, it's the DOJ under a Republican administration. So you're going to redact some Republican names and not redact some Democrat names. Democrats better be careful on that. And the third thing is on the embarrassment issue. Actually, there is language in the law that says those names will actually be released and they cannot be redacted, even if it causes, quote, embarrassment. That's the word, that's the language in the bill. So even if it causes embarrassment, those names must be released. That's interesting. Yeah. This is not going to go away. And Dan, to your point, it's a great point. Bottom line is, no matter what the DOJ does, Tom Massie, MTG, and others are going to the House, or John, you said that, sorry, are going to the House floor, and they're going to read the names because they got the AOK from the victims of Epstein. So they're going to do it. So these names are coming out. It's just, how is it going to go down?
I want to finish up on a tangent, and that is to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene specifically, because speaking of a 180, she has completely changed her tune from what we've come to know about her as a member of Congress here over these last couple of months. Once a firebrand, a MAGA firebrand, she's not public enemy number. I don't know if number one is right. I mean,
sure,
there are a number of them, but she's certainly right now public enemy number one in Trump world for her support to release the Epstein files. But she's been running against the administration on a number of different things. During the shutdown, she's been one of the few Republicans outspoken about trying to fix the Obamacare subsidies. She was harshly critical of Speaker Johnson for his decision to keep all of the lawmakers home during the government shutdown. And now she in an interview, in a surprising interview on CNN, the interviewer called her out for, like, you have helped to increase the nasty rhetoric in political rhetoric in this country over the years, and pointed out a number of different things she said. And she, mea culpa, I was wrong for anything that I have done to help foster this culture. I was wrong, and I'm not going to do it anymore. It's, David, to me, it's been a remarkable change. I don't know what's real, what's not. I'm very curious what you think about where Marjorie Taylor Greene is right now.
Well, I'm not going to judge her intentions because, that's getting into her heart. And so I just won't go there.
Yeah.
But I will say this, and this is really important, guys. MAGA and America First are different. That is something crucial that I think journalistically as we report this story. A lot of people use it interchangeably. It's not. America First could really be called America Only. And there's a big difference between what MAGA is trying to do, what Trump is trying to do, which is, hey, there's a world out there. I'm president of the United States, leader of MAGA movement, and I've got to deal with the world. And the way I'm going to deal with the world is as long as America gets something from it, for example, Saudi Arabia, $1 trillion, but we're going to, give Saudi Arabia F-35s. And it's like, wait a minute, we're giving Saudi Arabia what? The America only crowd, the America First crowd would say, you got to be kidding me. But in Trump's MAGA view, but America is getting something from it, from a business deal, the art of the deal. And once again, I'm not saying that's going to satisfy a lot of folks within MAGA. There is an America only, America First. I rather call them America only. I think that makes the better distinction. That's the pure isolationist crowd. And that's what Marjorie Taylor Greene represents. Tucker Carlson, we can go down the list. They're all there. So that's what's going on. So to me, guys, this is a big proxy war that has begun for what the shape of the Republican Party will look like in 2028. And there is a strain of anti-Semitism. I'm not saying Marjorie Taylor Greene or all these people. I'm not talking about anti-Semitism with them necessarily. What I'm saying is within the America Only movement, there are certain people, hello, Nick Fuentes, and others, and hello, Groypers, that are anti-Semitic. And so the America Only crowd has got an issue that they've got to figure out. Because if you're going to be America Only, you got problems from a pure isolationist standpoint to begin with. And then you got the anti-Semitism strain as well inside folks that call themselves America First / America Only. So I think this all gets back down to J.D. Vance and who's going to run against J.D. Vance. And I'm not convinced that J.D. Vance is going to be the nominee. We'll see. I think that, and once again, I'm not trying to put J.D. Vance in the America Only category, but I think he's a lot more sympathetic to the America Only category than President Trump is. And I've got a lot more to say about this, but
I have
that's
a question
what I got.
for you, David. If you don't mind, John, real quick.
Oh,
sure.
On that front, you're saying that J.D. Vance, you're not convinced he's going to be the nominee, and we're talking about America Only and America First, this rift that's going on. Are we going to see like a repeat? Not a repeat because it's a totally different context, but the same phenomena of like the Ross Perot. Are we going to get like another person that runs? Like, let's say J.D. Vance is kind of really courting the America Only crowd, right? And then someone else comes up to say, wait a minute, we don't want to go that route. Are we looking at a possible situation like that, and then we get a divide? Like maybe they try to, run against them in the primary, or maybe if nobody gets close, somebody just comes out and we've got a third candidate out there, and it splits the Republican vote and then paves the way for a Democrat. Do you see that happening?
So yes and no. I know that doesn't really answer your question, but let me break it down a little bit further. Can you start a third political party? Well, of course you can start it, but it's not going to do anything. And there's so many levers that you have to cross and ballots you have to get on. So I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think there's going to be a third America
like an independent,
Only.
Maybe somebody goes independent or something like that.
Yeah, but the independent, you're not going to have like Marjorie Taylor Greene necessarily being an independent, for example. Right. But I think, and you're not going to have her be an America Only candidate with a third party registered. I do think what you're going to see is you're going to have that contingent play power broker as a super PAC, or you're going to have them as a contingent to say, hey, MAGA, hey, J.D. Vance, hey, Republican nominee, if you want the White House, you better listen to us, because I'm going to take all of my X amount of millions, all my young males under 30, all my people, and we're gone. We're not going to vote for you. So here's our list of what we want. And I think that is the power broker deal that could play out from a super PAC perspective or others. And so I don't see it as a third party candidate. I'm not ruling it out. I mean, I guess they could try. And maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene has aspirations to potentially do that. And maybe that's what she's laying the groundwork for, kind of a third way, if you will, but not your typical third way that we've heard about in the past. One last thing I'll say is that I think you're going to have some sort of establishment candidate. And I don't want to say Mike Pence, but someone like a Mike Pence that will run in the primaries to kind of bring the Republican Party back to its establishment kind of GOP traditional roots. I can say it. I think you're going to have a candidate like that. You're going to have J.D. Vance. I think Marco Rubio is going to run. I think he might be a split the difference candidate. And I also think you could have, and just hear me out on this, in 2020, I'm saying this in 2025, 3/4-inch tape, cue it up. Ron DeSantis. I think Ron DeSantis is a guy that is definitely America. He's rah-rah America. He's a problem solver. He's a no-nonsense guy who could split the difference. I know he's got residual baggage from running against Trump. I get it. But I do think that a lot of Republicans would be very comfortable with Ron DeSantis because he kind of splits the difference between the J.D. Vance on the one side and the Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence, Nikki Haley on the other. I think Ron DeSantis is your middle candidate, and I think that could be the winning ticket for Republicans.
Yeah, DeSantis was pretty rough on the campaign trail, but we've seen a lot of politicians have a rough first go at it, learn some lessons, and then have a second act that actually does perform well. So, Marco Rubio would be the same because he ran.
Rubio's in that same ilk.
Yeah, back in 2016. Yeah. Gentlemen, we'll leave it there. So much more we could get to here on this episode of the podcast, but we only have time is a commodity, and we've run out of ours. So, for Dan Andros, David Brody, thanks everyone for tuning in once again to Navigating Trump 2.0.